And we are following breaking news right now on CBS Sports HQ in the world of sports. This coming in, 4 players for the Brooklyn Nets have tested positive for the coronavirus. The team released a statement saying in part, quote, 4 Brooklyn Nets players have tested positive for COVID-19. Of the 4, 1 player is exhibiting symptoms. The other 3 are asymptomatic. All 4 players are presently isolated and under the care of team physicians. It goes on to say that they are notifying anybody who may have been in contact with these 4 players, other teammates, family members, and friends, so they can go ahead and self-isolate as well. All right, so let's talk about more about this. 4 players for the Brooklyn Nets testing positive for the coronavirus. Let's bring in NBA writer James Herbert on the phone. He covers the Brooklyn Nets in part of all the other responsibilities he has here at CBS Sports HQ. James, you're there in New York. What can you tell us about this situation?
Yeah, I can tell you it's concerning, it's worrying. It's not like a huge shocking surprise considering just how bad it's getting in New York. I mean, just today I was listening to Mayor Bill de Blasio talking about how it's not that long before we hit 10,000 cases. We're at 814 cases in the city as of earlier today. So to hear that 4 different players on the Nets have tested positive, it's not great, but I imagine that we're going to continue to see positive results around the sports world. And there are certain teams that are awaiting results that we probably haven't even really been talking about. I just saw a reporter in Boston tweeting that as of this afternoon, the Celtics were still waiting for their results. They were tested a few days ago, and we just don't know. So I think even though the NBA canceled games, there could have been people who were positive before that, and there could have been people who contracted it in the past few days if they haven't been properly self-isolating.
And now, James, just to clarify, of course, the NBA shut down last Wednesday on the heels of finding out that Rudy Gobert, also Donovan Mitchell, tested positive for coronavirus. I was going through the schedule, though. The Jazz had not played the Nets, so they don't think that there was any relation to those cases with these 4, correct?
Probably not. It's interesting. Like the part of the release that the Nets sent out is that they have been contacting anybody who had physical contact with these Nets players, and including all the recent teams they played against. Now, if you go back a full 2 weeks, including today, then that would be 5 teams. It would be the Lakers, the Bulls, the Spurs, the Grizzlies, and the Celtics. But I don't know if you want to count this as the entire 2 weeks, like leading up till today, because they were probably tested a couple of days ago. So maybe the Celtics and the Grizzlies aren't a part of those teams that needed to be alerted to this situation. But I mean, it's such a strange thing. I mean, the night that the NBA decided to suspend the season, the night that we found out that Gobert was positive, there was a tweet going around that basically showed how the entire league could be connected over the previous 14 days. It is not that hard for a disease to spread, not just from player to player on the court, but from sort of person to person around the entire league, because the full schedule was going on at that point. They never actually reached the point where they were playing without fans. So in terms of team personnel and staff, in terms of the players on various teams, even though there wasn't direct contact between the Jazz and the Nets, even though there wasn't direct contact between the Pistons and the Nets, because forward Christian Wood from the Pistons has also been confirmed to have tested positive for COVID-19. We don't know how many other people in the NBA, whether it be personnel or players, were traveling around, going into arenas, either playing on the court or interacting with players during that time.
All right, James Herbert, CBS Sports NBA writer, joining us on the phone there from New York. I know there's a lot of restrictions going on right now in that state. James, thank you so much for joining us. Stay safe. All right, just to recap, 4 Nets players have tested positive for coronavirus. The team issuing a statement saying 1 of them is showing symptoms, the other 3 so far asymptomatic. Joining us now to talk about this is Tim Doyle. Tim, I guess this just goes to show that all of these leagues, the NBA included, made the right decision when they went ahead and shut the season down for the time being.
You know, Adam Silver canceled games that night, the late West Coast games when Rudy Gobert was first diagnosed, and hats off to the Ivy League. They were a day or two before everybody else when they canceled their conference tournament. And I remember coming on this very show and saying, well, they're going to play the tournament, but with no people in the stands how quickly everything has changed. And then once Donovan Mitchell tested positive, then, I figured that everything else was just eventually going to shut down. Now, only one person was showing symptoms from the Nets, and that's what makes this, oh so scary. And growing up in New York, and I have parents that are in their late 70s and in their 80s, and I think everyone feels like, oh, this can't happen to me. Well, nobody, and I mean nobody, is in better shape than NBA players in the middle of their season, and they're coming down with this. So this just shows you that social distancing has to happen for everybody, regardless of age, or race, or height, or athleticism. And this is a really real thing that's obviously only going to keep getting worse as far as numbers wise. And I was definitely one of those guys that at the beginning of all this, I was like, this is just going to pass, just a phase. And I feel dumb for saying things like that, because I've realized, and ever since Thursday afternoon, I have not left my house.
Yeah, I think this just goes to show this can happen to anybody. So often we put our athletes and celebrities on these pedestals. They seem untouchable, and here they are, many of them coming down with this virus. Tim, do you know, once they went ahead and disbanded for the season, or suspended it, I should say, if they were told, hey, don't hang out with one another? Because 4 guys, I assume, they're friends, maybe they were hanging out with one another. Do you know what they told players going into this?
I don't, but you got to assume, right? I'm sure you're still hanging out with some of your coworkers there. My wife is a nurse. I'm forced to hang out with her, but she had to go to work yesterday, and obviously is going to get exposed to, who knows what. And she can wear a mask and do the best she can. But the crazy thing is, 4 Nets have it, only 1 shows the sign. So something that worries me, and I was kind of thinking about before I came on and did this segment, didn't Charles Barkley get tested like 3 days ago? I'm starting to become a bit concerned. We have not gotten the results back. And I think Barkley was the first guy earlier in the day, before any of the conference tournaments, they were going to be played, but without fans. He was the first guy that said these games need to be canceled. And I remember hearing him saying that, and that kind of echoing like, wow, he is right. This is what they need to do. And now he doesn't feel well. He goes and gets tested. And now 3 days later, we don't know what's going on. So when you talk about celebrities, here was a guy who was at the forefront of pushing for everything to stop, no more games. He thinks he has it. We're not getting his test results back. So if you're out there, we're obviously all thinking and praying for you, but hopefully it's something that is under control. But the fact that we haven't heard anything, Amanda, I'm actually a bit concerned.
Yeah, well, I'm sure as soon as there is news, we will hear it. Tim Doyle, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this new 4 players for the Brooklyn Nets testing positive for coronavirus. Tim, thank you.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.